The Arabian Peninsula is the largest peninsula in the world, linking directly into the Fertile Crescent and from there the rest of Eurasia. The west coast is on the Red Sea, the east coast on the Persian Gulf, and into the Indian Ocean. Arabia is arid, limiting agriculture. Pre-Islamic Arabic goods did not differ much from other desert peoples. Bedouin tribes had small herds of sheep, goats, horses, and camels. These nomads could move goods over substantial distances across deserts. Lamb meat would have been common, as would goat milk and related products like cheese. Medieval cookbooks showed bread using vinegar-soaked raisins with garlic, walnuts, and mustard. Yogurt and olive oil were common items. The date palm was a major food source, Arab specialty, and trade good. The dates were made into vinegar, bread, and cakes. Like most cultures, Arabs had their own sweet-tooth specialties. Almond-based desserts were similar to baklava. Pastry dough could be mixed with ground almonds, cooked in honey or sugar. Deep-fried dumplings were covered with date syrup and sesame seeds. Fried dough had honey and sweet syrups. Rice pudding was made with milk sweetened with honey or sugar. Arabs were specialists in raising camels and horses. The silk and incense trade routes linked Mediterranean with African and Asian trading centers for incense, spices, and other luxury goods. Arabian myrrh and frankincense were key items traded in both directions. Add Indian spices with Chinese silk gems, and the trade was extensive and lucrative. The Arabian Peninsula was conveniently in the geographic middle. Mecca was the religious center with the shrine of Kaaba, the house of Allah. Because the shrine encouraged the annual pilgrimage to Mecca, the city became an obvious trade and finance center for the entire Arab world. It was at a crossroads of major caravan routes. Medina was a desert oasis and successful agricultural center called the cradle of Islamic culture and civilization. The economy was dependent on dates and other vegetables. Muhammad created a new religion in Mecca and Medina as a prophet and inspired warlord. He united Arabia into an Islamic state based on the teachings of the Quran. Muhammad would seclude himself at Hira, a mountain cave, for prayer. In 610, when he was about 40, he received revelations when he was visited by the angel Gabriel. In Mecca, Muhammad proclaimed that God is one, requiring complete submission, Islam, to God. Hostility forced him and his followers to flee Mecca, eventually settling in Medina, where he united the local tribes. After occasional fighting, he marched to Mecca and basically seized the city by diplomacy. Muhammad was known to fast often and expected to eat dates and drink water. Beyond that, he must have eaten the common food of Mecca and Medina, including those mentioned in the Quran. Dates provided flexibility. They could be cooked with butter and cereals. Water or milk could be added. Barley flatbreads or pancakes were baked with water and salt. Lentils were served in a variety of ways, combined with some combination of lamb, salt, cinnamon, water, chickpeas, bread, and noodles. Vinegar stew included carrots, onions, leeks, lamb, almonds, dried figs, raisins, and molasses. By the time of his death in 632, Muhammad had converted most of the Arabian Peninsula to Islam. During the European Middle Ages, Muslims conquered much of Eurasia under various caliphates. By 750, the Umayyad Caliphate controlled effectively all of North Africa, the Iberian Peninsula, and most of the Middle East, diminishing the Byzantine Empire in particular. Conquest and regime changes continued. Unlike increasingly intolerant Christianity, Islam culture was relatively enlightened. The Islamic Golden Age was roughly from the 8th to the 14th century. Baghdad became the world's largest city. The rulers supported scholars who would study the classics from the ancient world as well as from China and India and make important findings in mathematics, science, and philosophy. Avicenna and Averroes were major philosophers, including interpreting the works of Aristotle. Mathematicians introduced Arabic numbers, actually from India, to replace the cumbersome Roman numerals, eventually adding the zero. Algebra is from the Arabic algebra. Arab merchants were skilled traders ready to transfer the goods and knowledge across the Muslim world. Tea became available from China. As conquests continued into India, sugar became increasingly available, which also increased tea consumption, plus candies using sugar. Turkish delight, a candy based on sugar and a gel of starch, was an Islamic confection that was probably created in Turkey. Coffee was an Ethiopian discovery, and coffee houses spread throughout the Muslim world. Oranges and lemons became another food source. Around 900 CE, Islamic scientists bred citrons and bitter oranges to get lemons, which spread rapidly. Somewhat later, sweet oranges from India and China became available. Purple carrots apparently came from Iran or Afghanistan. Islamic scientists created yellow carrots, which proved more popular and spread around the Islamic world and beyond. Hospitality and generosity were Arab traditions. Meals typically were large family affairs with sharing of meals. Celebrations were common. Alms were a religious duty. Islam banned alcohol. Ironically, the Muslim world improved distillation, but used it mainly for perfumes. Pork was a common food taboo and banned by Muslims. Farmers raised more chickens, goats, and sheep. The Ottoman Empire came from Anatolia, conquering North Africa, Greece, and the Balkans. Then Sultan Mehmed II conquered the Byzantine Empire in 1453. Constantinople became the new capital with the name changed to Istanbul. Conquest continued. The Sultan, Suleiman the Magnificent, could claim the perfect name for the greatest of festival preparers. He ruled over 45 years until 1566. Suleiman ruled from the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul. The palace kitchens were huge, needed for the battalions of chefs and assistants used to feed the emperor's administrators, harem, and eunuchs. Most were Turkish, with ancient traditions, but large numbers were recruited far and wide from across the empire. Turkish food included yogurt, kebabs, gyros, pita bread, feta cheese, baklava, moussaka, rice pilaf, and Turkish coffee with sugar, the drink to serve after each meal. Topkapi Palace could host up to 10,000 guests with 1,000 chefs. A kitchen ledger from a 1539 festival named 100 dishes served. Meals started with a broth of beef stock. Meats included kebabs, dumplings with yogurt and garlic, meatballs, and meat stew. Other feasts recorded roasted lamb stuffed with rice, raisins, and vegetables. Fine white bread had sesame seeds or spices like cloves. Then fruit dishes stuffed with mutton and garlic filling served with yogurt. Desserts were often served between other courses, including honeyed pastries, fruits, wheat berry pudding, baklava, rice pudding, and chocolate. And don't forget the coffee. The Ottomans maintained power until after World War I, when Turkey became a secular state. We're moving on to the city-states of Italy, developing the wealth and power to create the Renaissance. Next time on Food History and Mystery.